Hello everyone and welcome back to Bitwig Studio and Music Production. This is lesson 4.14, and in this lesson we're going to take a look at another one of the modulators, and this one is called the step. So as the name implies, this actually involves steps, so various places on a parameter that you want to adjust, kind of like the sample and hold, only you have a lot more control over it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to open this up. It's under the modulators and the step. And up front, I have run into one problem recently. At one time, this was working fine, but now it seems to be struggling. When I click play, you're going to see the playhead move across these 8 steps. As so. Now the issue is that when I try and move this into free run mode, it doesn't move. So I have no idea what's up with that. Maybe it's just something screwy on my machine. I don't know. I've had another weird bug where when I try to stretch an audio event and have it start from a certain point, my whole system crashes. So I'm not sure if that's something on my end or if it's something on their end. I've sent them a couple emails. Never heard anything back, but we'll go through this and just forego the free run version. But the free run works exactly the same as the LFO. It will run based on a hertz setting as compared to going on the beat. But for now, we'll work this on the beat. So here, the effects that you're going to drop in come over here to the right. And let's again maybe work with a filter, just because it's a pretty easy one to hear. And let's get to work on this and start understanding what we're doing. Trying to find just a good filter. Let's go ahead and use this bandpass just for fun. So the first setting you're going to want to make is the number of steps that you're going to have. Okay, so this ranges from 1 step, which isn't really going to make a whole lot of sense because you can't really vary information in there too much unless you do some interesting modulation within the step mod, but I'll probably leave that up to you guys. Instead, you can pull this all the way out to 16, and I think for us right now, let's just use 8. That's fine. That's going to be 2 full bars, right? Especially if we're going at quarter notes. We can actually count this out just so I can prove it to you all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, you know, etc. So this isn't obviously stretched right back to the 1 like it probably should be. Again, the reason for that is because I do have a bit of a glitch there. And I also seem to have lost my step mod. Oh, I put it on the master. So I'll go ahead and drop that back onto the audio now, and maybe let's see, is free running going to work? No. So we're back to our time in beats. Now this icon here has to do with the amount of shuffle that we have set. And we're going to talk all about this shuffle setting when we start talking about MIDI clips. But for now, let's just keep that turned off. Basically, this is going to impact how we're going through those quarter notes. If it's just going to go through quarter notes straight, or if it's going to be humanized, and if it's going to swing a little bit, aka will it go off of the grid? And that is what that parameter is going to do. So it would take into account our global swing or shuffle modes, whatever we have set up here. And again, we will get to that very, very soon. All right, so now let's actually try to start getting some modulation to happen. So I'm going to click the mod button, and I'm going to take our cutoff here. And instead, let's actually open this all the way up, select mod, and pull it back a ways. All right, so now if I play back, all right, nothing's happening. We're not getting any movement. Why is that? Well, we actually have to set the steps in here. So if I pull this guy way up, you can see how much of a difference this is going to have. And part of the issue here is that if I select the modulation depth like I did here, and I have this all the way up to the center, anytime I move this down, it's not really going to make any kind of difference at all. right? So be very careful about how you set this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this. I'm going to put it in the middle, hit mod, and pretty much pull it to a little under 100%. So if we're perfect right in the middle, we should be able to go 100%, but nothing's ever perfect. So I'm just going to pull that down. And in fact, I don't really want to go all that low. So it's going to base on how we set this thing up. So here we go. Now if we play it back. Right, so in a lot of ways, this looks like what the sample and hold circuit was doing, only a little bit different, right? Because we have a little bit more control over exactly what's happening. So what does our speed parameter do? Well, let's see what happens if I turn this down. Watch the modulation. So you can see that our speed knob, if we turn this way down, it actually is going to kind of start giving us more of a gradual fade in between our different parameters. So instead of just jumping from point to point to point to point, it will actually move a little bit more gradually, as you've seen. And that can be really helpful in a lot of situations. And for me, working with any of these effects, a lot of times I like to have that little bit of glide, so the speed can be super helpful. Now, of course, we can also change the speed at which we're going through the actual steps. And to do that, all I have to do is adjust this parameter here. And again, we can use dotted notes or triplets. And then if we don't want to have something that's constantly hitting on the beat, like assuming that this had started right on the 111, we could actually use like an odd number, like a 5, and it can create some really interesting polyrhythms throughout. So it's not going to keep hitting on the 1 every time. It's going to take quite a bit of time for it to cycle back through and be repetitious. And you can hear that in this example. Especially if we slow it down. So notice where it gets when it hits to right here. And now let's watch and see what happens when it works itself back through. Right, so we started at a different point. So there's so many things you can do with the step mod. There's so many little tricks and fun things that it would take a really long time for me to go through and explain all of them. The one thing that you might consider doing with the step mod is incorporating it into an LFO. So if we just delete that and pull up an LFO device here, the first thing I'm going to route into the LFO is another one of these modulators, and it's going to be the stepper. So now what I could do is take the LFO1 and actually modulate a bunch of these parameters. I can modulate speed. I can modulate actually where it's going to hit in here. So there's just so much that you can do. It's really so much fun. I can't even begin to explain it. And the one thing I didn't mention before is that we have dry-wet mixes on both the LFO and on the step mod. So if you were working in a parallel configuration, so let's say at the front here we had a FX layer. We had one that was dry. And then we had the, whoops. Excuse me. And then we'll have this one, we'll call this one the mod layer. I could then take these two guys and drop them in there. It actually just made a new layer for me. And now you can see that if I wanted to, I could adjust like the dry wet mix in here or the dry wet mix here if it's getting too powerful for my parallel signal chain that I have set up. All right, so I hope that was helpful for you guys. Again, I apologize. I'm not sure if I'm doing something wrong for why the free run mode isn't working, or if it's actually just a glitch within the program itself. As far as I know, it is just a glitch within the program. So that's going to do it for this lesson. I hope that was helpful. Get as creative and as crazy as you want. Build some LFOs into some steppers and some steppers into some LFOs. And in the next video, we're going to talk about the last modulator. So you could eventually start to combine all three of these guys to get some really powerful results. Thank you for watching, and you will hear from me again in the next lesson.